Welcome to the Midnight Mind. If you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and while you're at it, hit that like button for me. I really would appreciate it. It's midnight, and that means one thing. It's time to enter the mind of Machiavelli. Imagine waking up one day and realizing that most people around you no longer question anything. They accept what they hear without reflection. They repeat what they're told without verification. And they react instantly rather than pausing to think. This isn't some distant possibility. It's the world we are quietly drifting into. Thinking has always been hard. It demands energy, attention, and the willingness to doubt. In today's culture, it is often discouraged altogether. We live in an environment that rewards speed, conformity, and outrage. Contemplation and careful reflection are seen as weakness. The result is predictable. The ability to think critically erodes, and people give away their independence without even realizing it. Machiavelli saw this danger long before our modern age. He wrote that men judge more by their eyes than by their hands, for everyone can see, but few can truly discern. In other words, people believe appearances, not reality. The manipulator understands this. The politician, the salesman, the leader who seeks power. All know that the crowd will trust the image presented more than the truth hidden behind it. And when a society loses its capacity for critical thought, it becomes a society governed entirely by appearances. Modern systems, whether it's media, education, or technology, are designed for efficiency, not for wisdom. Social platforms feed us what we already agree with. Schools often reward memorization, not exploration. News outlets compete for attention by appealing to emotion, not truth. Each of these patterns trains people to react, not to reflect. It's no surprise then that our collective reasoning weakens while noise multiplies. The philosopher Noam Chomsky described this as the manufacturing of consent. When people are conditioned to consume information without questioning it, they become easy to manage. And when people are easy to manage, they are easy to deceive. The fewer questions a society asks, the less it notices when it's being misled. Critical thinking was once among the highest human skills. It gave us science, medicine, art, and law. It's the reason humanity has solved the greatest problems of the past. Today, it's often seen as inconvenient. It slows the pace of debates, it interrupts the cycle of outrage, and it asks a question that many find unbearable. Is this really true? That one question has become rare in a culture addicted to certainty. Part of the decline comes from information overload. The human mind is bombarded with more data today than at any other point in history. Studies show that we process 5 times more information in a single day than people did just a few decades ago. The brain, overwhelmed, takes shortcuts. It leans on group opinion, authority figures, and the loudest voices in the room. Truth becomes whatever is repeated most. Another piece of the problem is attention. Deep reading has been replaced by scrolling, skimming, and swiping. But critical thought requires sustained focus. You can't weigh evidence if your mind breaks every few seconds. You cannot test arguments if you never sit with them long enough to understand. Without attention, thinking collapses into reaction. Carl Sagan once warned that we live in a society dependent on science and technology, while at the same time, very few understand either. His concern was not simply ignorance, it was the erosion of our ability to think about the systems we rely on. When the majority depend on tools they can't explain, they become vulnerable to anyone who can manipulate their perception. Critical thinking is uncomfortable by its nature. It requires humility. It means admitting you don't know everything. It means facing the possibility that some of your beliefs are wrong. It means living with uncertainty while others demand certainty. This comfort drives many to avoid it. They retreat into slogans, tribes, and pre-packaged opinions. They exchange the responsibility of thinking for the comfort of belonging. Education plays a role in this decline. John Taylor Gatto, a critic of modern schooling, argued that schools are designed not to create thinkers, but obedient workers. Obedience is rewarded. Curiosity is treated as disruption. Over years, this shapes children into adults who fear asking difficult questions. They learn to prioritize approval over truth, and by the time they enter society, the habit is permanent. Social pressure strengthens the pattern. To doubt publicly, to hold unpopular views, or to challenge consensus can cost friendships, jobs, and status. And so people stay quiet. Silence becomes habit. Habit becomes complicity. Slowly, a society that once valued thought becomes a society that punishes it. The psychologist Erich Fromm described this process as an escape from freedom. Freedom requires responsibility. To think for yourself means you cannot blame others for your ignorance. You must carry the burden of truth. For many, that burden is too heavy, so they trade it for certainty offered by leaders, institutions, or groups that promise to think for them. Technology has amplified the effect. Social media thrives on speed, outrage, and repetition. It rewards reaction, not reflection. Algorithms are designed to capture attention, not to encourage clarity. In this environment, those who pause to reflect are outshouted by those who rush to react. To think carefully looks weak, while to speak instantly looks strong. Even truth itself has been reshaped. In the digital age, what matters is not whether something is accurate, but whether it spreads. Opinions are not judged by reasoning, but how many people agree with them. This is a new kind of tyranny, an intellectual one, and it's among the most dangerous of all. Where does this leave us? The solution is not intelligence alone, it's courage. The courage to doubt. The courage to say, I don't know. The courage to hold opposing ideas in your mind without rushing to resolve them. Socrates said that wisdom begins with the knowledge that you know nothing. This was not ignorance, it was humility. The recognition that truth must be pursued, not assumed. Critical thinking is not acquired overnight. It's a discipline. It requires practice. It means reading books, not just headlines. It means listening to those you agree with. It means patience in the face of complexity. Above all, it requires rejecting the temptation of intellectual laziness, for laziness is the true enemy of thought. The decline of critical thinking is most obvious in the way people conform. Conformity is easier than reflection. It requires no effort, no courage, no risk. When everyone around you nods in agreement, it feels safer to nod along. But safety is often an illusion. History shows that entire nations have walked willingly into disaster because individuals were unwilling to question the crowd. To think differently is to stand apart, and for many, that's too high a price. Fear is another powerful force. People fear being excluded, rejected, or punished for stepping out of line. They learn quickly that learning an unpopular view can carry consequences. So they silence themselves. Over time, that silence hardens into habit, and when enough people form the habit of silence, a society can be steered in any direction. Tyranny doesn't require constant force. It requires only a population that no longer questions what it's told. Propaganda feeds on this silence. Its effectiveness doesn't come from accuracy, but from repetition. If a message is repeated often enough, it begins to feel true. The human mind, overwhelmed by noise, reaches for shortcuts. It mistakes familiarity for truth, and in that moment, persuasion becomes control. Those who do not think critically become amplifiers of propaganda, spreading the very illusions that misled them. This is why Machiavelli, centuries ago, observed that appearances are more powerful than reality. People judge by what they see, not by what is. In our time, this truth has only grown sharper. Media thrives on images and headlines. Politicians thrive on sound bites. Social media thrives on outrage. The deeper reality is ignored, because it requires attention, patience, and thought. And so appearances triumph again and again, shaping lives more than truth ever does. But this decline is not inevitable. Individuals can resist it. The first defense is deliberate thought. When information reaches you, slow it down. Before you accept it, pause. Consider the source. Consider the motive. Ask whether emotion is being used to bypass reason. That small pause is where independence begins. Most manipulation depends on speed. If you slow down, you break the pattern. The second defense is study. Critical thinking is not simply doubting everything. It's learning how to weigh evidence, test arguments, and reach conclusions. That skill doesn't appear by accident. It's cultivated. Read widely, especially from those you disagree with. Study history to see how illusions have misled people before. Learn logic, rhetoric, and persuasion, not to manipulate others, but to protect yourself from being manipulated. Education, when pursued seriously, is still the strongest shield against deception. The third defense is courage. For even when you think clearly, the world will resist you. People will say you're negative, cynical, or arrogant. They'll accuse you of disrupting harmony, and you must learn to carry that resistance calmly. To think critically is to accept misunderstanding. Progress always begins with the minority who are willing to see what others deny. In time, clarity is recognized, but at first, it's always resisted. Another safeguard is the discipline of silence. In a world of constant noise, silence is a form of strength. You don't need to respond to every headline, every opinion, every provocation. Much of what manipulates us does so because we engage with it. By stepping back, you see more clearly. Reflection grows in silence, and clarity grows in reflection. The man who can hold his tongue until he has thought deeply is rarely deceived. Critical thinking also requires humility. The proud man believes he already knows enough. The thinker knows he never will. Pride closes the door to learning. Humility keeps it open. This humility is not weakness, it is strength. For only the humble can admit error. Only the humble can change their minds. And only those who change their minds can continue to grow. There is also the practice of focus. A scattered mind cannot think clearly. Attention is the rarest resource in the modern world, and most people give it away carelessly. They allow themselves to be pulled from screen to screen, from headline to headline, until they can no longer hold a single thought for more than a few seconds. The disciplined thinker learns to protect his focus. He sets aside time for study, for reflection, for writing, and he guards that time fiercely. The decline of critical thought is not simply about individuals. It affects entire societies. When people stop thinking, institutions grow stronger and individuals grow weaker. Power shifts from the citizen to the authority. And once that balance tips too far, freedom collapses. Every dictatorship in history has depended not only on force, but on the obedience of those who chose not to question. The greatest danger is not in the ruler's cruelty, but in the people's compliance. And yet the reverse is also true. When individuals reclaim their ability to think, societies change, ideas spread, illusions are broken. People begin to see through the appearances and demand truth. The strength of a society rests not in its institutions, but in the clarity of its citizens. When people think clearly, leaders cannot deceive as easily. Propaganda loses its hold. Fear loses its bite. This is why critical thinking is more than a personal virtue. It's a civic duty. To think for yourself isn't selfish. It's the foundation of freedom. Your refusal to conform strengthens not only you, but everyone around you. Each act of reflection pushes back against the collective stupidity. Each moment of doubt protects against deception. Each individual who thinks clearly makes it harder for manipulation to rule. The responsibility is heavy, but it is also meaningful. For in a world of noise, clarity is rare, and what is rare is valuable. To think critically is to carry a light in the dark. It may not always be welcomed, but it is always needed. And those who learn to carry it steady become a force far greater than they realize. If the decline of critical thinking is one of the greatest dangers of our time, then the restoration of it is one of the greatest responsibilities. No one else can do it for you. It cannot be legislated by governments or imposed by schools. It must be chosen by the individual, practiced daily, and guarded like a treasure. For clarity of mind is exactly that, a treasure in a world that values distraction more than wisdom. The rebuilding of critical thought begins with simple habits. First, cultivate the discipline of reading. Not scrolling, not skimming, not consuming headlines, but reading books, essays, and works that demand attention. Deep reading stretches the mind. It forces you to follow complex arguments, weigh evidence, and see connections. Each page is an exercise in focus. Over time, this practice strengthens your ability to think when others can only react. Second, write. Writing is thinking made visible. It clarifies your ideas, reveals contradictions, and forces precision. Many people believe they understand something until they try to explain it in writing. Then, the gaps appear. Writing daily, even a single page, will sharpen your mind more than hours of passive consumption. It turns vague impressions into solid conclusions. It turns reaction into reflection. Third, practice questioning. When a claim is made, whether in conversation, media, or politics, train your mind to pause. What evidence supports this? What motives are behind it? What alternatives exist? This isn't cynicism, it is clarity. The difference between the two is that cynicism assumes everything is false, while clarity tests each claim before accepting it. The questioning mind doesn't reject truth, it confirms it. Another vital habit is exposure to disagreement. If you only listen to voices that confirm your beliefs, you'll grow weaker. Truth sharpens under pressure. Debate and dialogue strengthen reasoning. Seek out opposing ideas, not to mock or dismiss, but to understand. When you do, you'll find that either your position improves or is corrected. In both cases, you grow. Protecting your attention is also essential. In a noisy world, your mind is a battlefield. Guard it as carefully as your time and your money. Set aside periods free from distraction, when you can think without interruption. Turn off the noise. Step away from the endless feed of information. In those quiet moments, clarity begins to return. For the mind, like the body, requires rest and focus to remain strong. Discipline is the thread that ties all these habits together. Critical thinking is not built in bursts of inspiration. It's built in steady practice, day after day, choice after choice. The discipline to read instead of scroll, the discipline to write instead of react, the discipline to pause instead of rushing to judgment. Each small act builds strength, and over time, that strength becomes freedom. The rewards of critical thinking are immense. First, independence. You stop living at the mercy of every opinion. You stop being pulled by fear, manipulated by flattery, or silenced by guilt. You begin to choose with clarity. Independence of thought is the foundation of independence in life. Second, confidence. When you know how to think, you no longer fear disagreement. You no longer crumble under pressure. You can listen, reflect, and respond with clarity. Confidence doesn't come from always being right. It comes from knowing how to test whether you are. This quiet confidence is unshakable because it's rooted in process, not popularity. Third, contribution. A society filled with clear thinkers is harder to deceive, harder to divide, harder to control. Your own thinking strengthens not only you, but everyone around you. Families improve when one member refuses to live by illusions. Communities improve when a few individuals insist on clarity. Nations improve when enough citizens choose to think independently. Contribution begins with the individual, but its impact extends far beyond. Finally, clarity brings peace. Much of human suffering comes from confusion. Confusion about truth, about values, about priorities. When you think clearly, confusion dissolves. You may not have every answer, but you know how to approach questions. You carry less fear, because fear thrives in uncertainty. You carry less anger, because anger thrives on misunderstanding. Peace follows clarity as naturally as light follows dawn. The decline of critical thought is real, and it's dangerous. But it is not irreversible. Each person who chooses to rebuild their mind pushes back against the tide. Each reader, each writer, each thinker creates ripples that spread. Because thought is contagious. Clarity inspires clarity. One disciplined mind can influence many undisciplined ones. Earl Nightingale often said, "We become what we think about." If this is true, then the disappearance of thought is also the disappearance of freedom. But the reverse is also true. The return of thought is the return of freedom. Each time you choose reflection over reaction, you strengthen your life and your world. So begin where you are. Read with focus. Write with discipline. Question with honesty. Listen with humility. Protect your attention as you would protect your freedom. These habits will not only restore your ability to think, they will restore your ability to live with clarity, strength, and purpose. Critical thinking is not only a skill, it is a duty. It's the responsibility of every free person. And in a time when so many are willing to surrender that freedom, those who preserve it become invaluable. They are the ones who light the way forward, and perhaps, in the end, they are the ones who save us from ourselves. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thanks for joining me. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. And if you would like to see more content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.